What's going on, everybody? That didn't change the right scene. There we go. Hold up. All right. That wasn't smooth. But what's going on, everybody? Welcome in to the Blazers Uprise post-game show. A lot of overreactions I'm seeing tonight after this tough preseason loss. We'll go into kind of what the Blazers struggled with and things that they need to work on going into the regular season so they don't have performances quite as bad as this. You know, I'm glad it's the preseason. I'm glad this wasn't a regular season game, but there's going to be some growing pains when you're implementing new defensive schemes and, you know, some new players. The players aren't really much of an excuse for me, but they're completely changing their defensive philosophy, so I think that, you know, the players will need some time. We'll get into the defense, we'll get into the offense, we'll get into all of the struggles that the Blazers saw tonight. Eric, we're just going to start hot here. What's your initial takeaway from this game?
My takeaway is if this is just us not taking preseason very seriously, totally fine, nothing to worry about. If we look anywhere close to this when the regular season starts, I think it might be time to panic. But as of now, not panicking, preseason. Like, I feel like it's hard to get up for some of these games, and there's no fans on top of that. So, like, a meaningless game with no fans, it kind of excuses a little bit of it, but there was some really bad things that they need to work on as well, that if they don't get cleaned up in the next week, we're going to get destroyed in our first few games. Hopefully this is just us not wanting to show too much of the new stuff on film before we start the actual games that matter. And that would be I'm not saying that's a bad strategy, but like we don't know how it'll work if we don't show it either, though, or like try it a little bit in an actual game before it happens.
Yeah, my takeaway from this game is there's going to be some growing pains with the defense, but that's not a bad thing. That doesn't mean we shouldn't try and do what we're doing. Okay, there's going to be some growing pains implementing this new philosophy. My other takeaway is people are overreacting to how bad the final was, the final score. Oh, we lost by 30. There's a lot of things that contributed to that. I don't know how much of this you'll agree with, but we did miss a good amount of our open shots, right? It seemed like the team never had a rhythm, and part of that might be playing in altitude when the team literally is probably not really in shape. If you're playing in Denver in the middle of the season, I feel like it's a little bit easier. You're in game shape. You're ready to go. If you're coming in, start a preseason, barely had any practice time, I feel like the altitude will kind of just, it'll really hurt you. There was a lot of shots that missed short. Dame was 1 for 8 from 3. That's very unusual. You know what I mean? So that was a factor in it. We missed a lot of open shots. I felt like we didn't get great shots. I'm not trying to say that at all, but the open shots we did get, we didn't shoot that well of a percentage on. You know, that helped make it look worse. They hit a decent amount of contested shots. Our defense wasn't good overall. There was some stretches that I was really impressed with, but overall our defense wasn't good, but they did make a high percentage of contested shots as well. And guys like PJ Dozier, who isn't really known as a shooter, hit I think at least 3 threes, and I think all of them were contested. So stuff like that. The refs, I feel like, probably didn't do us any favors. You know, they were kind of iffy tonight, still in preseason form. So all those types of things contributed to making it a 30-point loss instead of a 15, all that stuff. It's like, I don't care that we lost by 30, right? I care about what issues do we have to fix in the regular season, right? And the main issue, do you want to get into the defense or do you want to get into the offense first?
Real quick, can I just address a comment in chat? So GK says we have 7 new guys in a rotational lineup, and y'all expect them to have perfect chemistry after 2 preseason games. I'm not sure if he's talking to chat or us, but
I don't think he's talking to us.
Here's the thing. Okay, we'll get into this, but
where does 7 come from? 7? It's not 7.
Whatever the number is. The problem to me is not a chemistry thing or anything like that. It's that we're still running an ISO-heavy offense on that end, and we're still running, we're still giving up too many wide-open shots on both around the basket and at the three-point line, and a high percentage of three-point shots. So those aren't necessarily chemistry things. So I'm not panicking about the chemistry. That kind of stuff, like if a pass is a little behind someone or someone's streaking ahead the court, we saw that a couple times tonight where we hit like Derek Jones Jr. But like that kind of stuff takes time. I'm not going to harp on any of that stuff. I just wanted to let that be known before you got into the more specific stuff.
Yeah, no, that's a great point to make. And honestly, a lot of our issues just comes from execution on the defensive end. On the offensive end, we're too high, so heavy right now. But here's the thing, right? Is like, the ISO heavy stuff, we've seen it work in the regular season. It's just like, oh, when the postseason comes around, we gotta be able to be more versatile offensively and move the ball better and cut better, right? But we can win games at a pretty high rate with the talent we have on this team playing ISO ball, especially if we defend, right? So like the ISO ball stuff is frustrating because it's the preseason, right? People were like, oh, don't worry about the offseason, it's just preseason. But the thing for me is like, okay, in the preseason we should be working on our deficiencies, and one of our main deficiencies is moving the ball. It's always been like that under Stotts. Now we have some ISO heavy players, so it's like it gets frustrating seeing a bunch of isolation when it's like we should be working on moving the ball and not even necessarily running sets. I understand if Stotts wants to save some sets for the regular season, but in freelance, where we're not in a set half-court offense, we need to be working on moving the ball, cutting, setting screens for each other out of freelance instead of just one-on-one pounding the ball or feeding Melo and letting Melo go one-on-one in the post constantly, So that part is frustrating, but it's not necessarily going to cost them too much in the regular season as much as their defense might, if that makes sense, because we've seen this team be able to win with ISO ball. It might hurt them in the regular season a little bit, but that's not really my worry. It's my worry come playoffs, because we've shown that it really hurts us in the playoffs, but that's a huge window to be able to try and work on that, whereas the defense, I think, is kind of the main issue right now. So the offense is frustrating, but it's not really like my top priority. My top priority is the defense.
The only thing I'll say to the offensive thing is we play our first 6 games, I think, are all against like top 10 defenses, or what are projected to be near the top 10 defensive wise. And we've seen that before when we play against elite defenses, the lack of ball movement gets us in trouble. And then if we're not hitting shots out of the ISO, then it doesn't happen. You saw tonight where there was one play where Hood drove, kicked it to Trent. He pump fakes, draws CJ's guy, so he passes to CJ. CJ pump fakes, draws Melo's guy, and he kicks it to Melo. Melo gets an open 3 in the corner. And that was like the only play I can remember where we had like really good ball movement for an entire possession, and it led to a wide open shot. And yet then we just go right back to ISOing or posting up people the next possession. And so I just want to – I think we do need ball – the problem is I don't think – it doesn't take a lot of chemistry, and it doesn't take a lot of like knowing the set or knowing how to play with people to cut or dive or set a back pick and stuff like that. So it's a little concerning that we haven't seen any of it if this is going to be our offense. Like I said, if we're just saving that stuff for the games that matter, then that's totally fine that we're not like putting that on film right now. We did have that one lob play to Derek Jones Jr. That was nice. He came off a curl pick around the free throw line from Nurk and got he actually caught the ball and went down with it instead of trying to because the pass wasn't the greatest pass, but the play was set up well, so I'm not going to matter about the results as much as like doing stuff like that. But
I just want to talk about that specific play. That'll get scouted in the season,
right?
And I feel like that type of play because here's the thing: whoever's guarding Derek Jones Jr. on that play is just going to go under that screen, because Derek Jones Jr., if he catches the ball 20 feet away from the rim, isn't really a threat. You know what I mean? So like we do need to get more creative with using Derek Jones Jr. as a cutter in sets where it'll be harder to guard it, because I feel like that specific set where he like came up and then backdoored around Nurkic, who was standing at the elbow, like that player is just going to go under that screen and shut that down that way. But I do like, that we got a bucket off it, that's nice. So I'll wait and see. I'm not going to sit here and criticize Stotts yet. I don't know set-wise what he's going to do, just because I don't know what he's saving or what he, I don't know exactly how it's going to work. I just hope that once we get into the regular season, we move the ball better, especially with the bench lineup, okay? Because here is my issue. The starting lineup can move the ball decently, I think. Like, it wasn't as bad with the starting lineup, and, like, I feel like we still need to utilize this Nurkic's playmaking a little bit more, but that could be attributed to maybe we're saving some sets, right? The bench is so ISO heavy that is frustrating because we have a really, really talented bench, especially offensively. Okay, we have a really talented bench offensively, but the problem is it seems like we're just ISOing every single possession. That one possession you brought up with the ball movement that ended in the Melo three is pretty much the only possession that I can think of with the bench unit where they move the ball like that. If we just continuously force feed Melo, the problem for me is how good the bench does is solely dependent on Melo scoring one-on-one off of contested mid-range jumpers if we just feed him the ball heavily, right? Because when we feed him the ball in the post, that's normally the shot he gets. You know, it's not the threes where the ball was moving and he's catching and shooting threes, which, as I've said, is the way he gets going, in my opinion. We saw that in the first game, and then these last two games, it's kind of been, we've been force-feeding him right away once he gets into the game and he's coming in cold and trying to force things. But that's the thing, it's like our bench is so talented that it shouldn't be so heavily reliant on any one player shooting well one-on-one, because that lowers how effective our bench is. Like, if Melo gets hot, sure, we can play really, really well, but it's like we have all these good offensive pieces. If we just move the ball better, if we, ran a few more sets, which, maybe we're saving them, if we just move the ball better, it would be more consistent and it would be more reliable. Whereas if you just feed a guy like Melo one-on-one, if he's off that night, it really hurts our bench. And if he's on that night, then that's phenomenal. You know what I mean? But that would be the case with any guy on the bench unit. If CJ is off and we consistently feed him one-on-one, our bench unit isn't going to do as good as if we just shared the ball and moved the ball. If Hood is off and we feed him one-on-one consistently, then it's not going to be as good as if we just share to move the ball. So that's the thing with the bench unit especially, is like, I feel like if we just play ISO ball with the bench unit, we really cap how good that unit could be.
Yeah, I completely agree. But the fact that it wasn't just Melo, I mean, we posted up Canner several times too. So I'm hoping this is just, we don't want to show our offense. Let's just post up guys, because that's, if you're not going to run your like normal offense, it's so easy to just be like, okay, let's just post up Melo and Cantor or whoever has the ball, just get it into the block, and we'll just run our offense that way without showing all these plays we're working on and stuff. History would tell us that that's not necessarily the case, but it also seems like Stotts is saying the right things and wanting it to change this year. So I have confidence that it's not just going to be like that once the regular season starts, and that we're just using, I mean, who cares if we post up Melo like 18 times in a row in this game, right? Because it doesn't really matter. But yeah, I just hope that, like you said, it's okay to sprinkle that in every once in a while. It just shouldn't be like our main focus of the second unit is getting him post touches versus, like, I love him spotting up for threes in the corner. Like, he's actually money from those, especially when he's open. So like the play where we move the ball and get him an open three, or like when he comes down in transition is open on the side and he gets past two, he usually hits those shots. Like, I want him shooting those shots. So it's not like I don't want Melo with the ball or part of the offense. I just want it to be only it's, and I'll say the same about CJ when he goes one-on-one. That should be a last resort type of thing when the offense, the first initial couple options doesn't work, and then we're like, oh crap, scramble mode, let's give the ball to CJ and let him break the defense down, or let's post up Melo and let him get a bucket real quick. That's totally fine, and that's great offense. You're going to get a good shot almost every time, especially when you have Cantor, Giles, Derek Jones Jr., those kind of guys in the game who are good offensive rebounders as well. So I have no problem with it if it's like later in the shot clock, but not wasting the shot clock just to do that too. I know that was driving you crazy during the game as well.
Yeah. I mean, yes. There are basically, lasting point with that bench unit is we're so offensively talented that we shouldn't have to rely on any one player. And guys like Melo, I think, will have better performances if he just eases his way into the game, playing as part of the team offense instead of us feeding him consistently when he's cold. You know what I mean? It warms him up. And then if he hits a couple threes, and maybe guy runs him off the line, he pump fake, one dribble pull up, knocks that down, then maybe feed him a couple times. And if he gets going that way, then maybe you just start feeding Melo, because then he has it going and he has a rhythm, and that's when his face-up stuff really, really works. Whereas if you just go to it right away when he's cold, I feel like it doesn't work too well. But I want to talk about the defense, because Vivek says Torrey Jones seems like he might be making excuses because the team looks garbage defensively when we tried to do what he's been saying for 2 years. That's not Vivek.
We didn't even do any of that stuff, I felt like. Yeah,
I know. We literally basically ran one scheme, just kind of showing the big. We didn't really blitz. We didn't drop. We didn't even run zone this game, So here's the thing. If you completely change your philosophy on defense, it's going to take players time to adjust, right? And the problem wasn't the coaching, trying to run these schemes. The problem was the players weren't executing these schemes. Guys like CJ, this stuff is new, right? Guys like Dame, he's used to the big dropping every time. So it's going to take some players that have been in our system time to adjust to a different defense that they haven't ever ran before, really. So that's the thing. Like, a lot of the execution stuff, it's not excuses because Stotts is doing what I wanted him to do. It's because I'm literally just pointing out why different defensive possessions are resulting in easy buckets. A lot of it is backside rotations aren't in sync, aren't there. The wrong guys are rotating over into help side. The backside rotations are super messy, especially with that bench unit. It got better during the third quarter. And let me just say this. I don't know if you'll agree with this, but there was a stretch in the third quarter from about the 10-minute mark to like the 5-minute mark where I think we played better defense than we did at all the entirety of last season. When we had Rocco in the game, Derrick Jones Jr. gave our starters where we played phenomenal defense, right? And that's what's kind of like weird with it, especially with the starting lineup, because there will be like a possession or two or three where we look phenomenal on the defensive end, and then there will be like 3 straight possessions where a guy like CJ makes a mistake rotating and it leads to an open 3, and we aren't in sync on our rotations and it leads to an open shot, or the wrong guy's over helping when it isn't his responsibility to help, and he's leaving his guy open and they hit an open shot and our defense looks terrible because of it. That's the thing that I've noticed is it's super inconsistent because if it was a problem with the scheme, it would never be great. If it was a problem with the scheme, it would never be like that. It wouldn't look as good as it did from the 10-minute mark to the 5-minute mark in the third quarter, in my opinion, right? I think the issue is we keep making a bunch of execution mistakes. The execution isn't quite there, and I can't fault Stotts for that at all, and that's not because of the scheme. A big part of it is, it's preseason, so I felt like Dame this game didn't really try defensively at all, and it's preseason, like, I can't really blame him. He's saving himself, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, that'll happen in the preseason. 2, this defense is new for a lot of guys. 3, it's the preseason, so they're only in game 3, so they're not going to be fully there mentally and recognizing situations in which they should help and rotate and whatnot. So that needs to be there. Like, there's a lot of issues defensively right now that I think are very fixable, and once we fix them, our defense will be better because we're running multiple schemes than if we just drop the big constantly.
Yeah, so let me put it this way. In the Western Conference Finals, we dropped the big game 1 against Steph Curry. He kills us, right? Mm-hmm. And everyone's like, why the heck would you drop the big against them? Well, it's because that's all we ran all year. So that's all we knew how to do. So the next game, they actually try to do it to where we don't drop the big. And our rotations are so bad on the backside because they haven't played that all year. And instead of it being a preseason game number 3, we're talking about game 2 of the Western Conference Finals making these same mistakes. So it has nothing to do with them, what system they're running right now. It's the fact that they need to practice different systems. And if Stotts, seriously, if he changes to being aggressive 100% of the time, that's not the right play either. There needs to be a mix of dropping the big occasionally, especially against some teams. It's good to drop the big. Playing aggressive out of the pick and roll, like against Houston, that's worked almost every time we played Houston recently. So, like, there needs to be different things you can handle, and that's why we don't make adjustments in the playoffs, because we don't work on it throughout the season. So we've said this before. It's not a matter of, one play, look at this, it sucks, you can't double team him, like Stotts said a few games in the bubble last year, when we tried to double off a pick and roll situation, it didn't work. It's not like that. You have to have repetition and that kind of stuff. So that's why you practice it throughout the year, so that if we're a playoff team and we have this roster in the playoffs, we can do so many different things defensively that we can adapt from game to game or switch it up instead of just, our drop system's not working, what are we going to do next game,
Exactly. That's a great point, too. And the thing is, in that Western Conference Finals, the defense we ran in Game 2, even though our backside rotations were horrible and we hadn't ran it all season, it was still better than the defense we ran in Game 1 when we dropped the big, which we had done all season, and we were about as good as we could possibly be dropping the big, but we got absolutely burnt and blown out because we were giving Steph Curry wide open three after wide open three. So we literally changed it up to a scheme that we hadn't ran all season long, and our backside rotations were very, very bad in that regard. And like in the first half, it looked well, and then the Warriors started picking those apart because they started getting used to the defense we were running, and they started picking those apart because, a team like Golden State and a team like Denver tonight, they're really good passing teams. So if your backside rotations aren't solid, then they can pick that apart with the pass. It's like if we had been running drop scheme, or if we had been running multiple schemes all season long during that year, I think we would have taken that series to 6 games because the backside rotations would be better. And you look at how close a couple of those games were, it literally came down to a bucket here, a bucket there, which was, they scored those because our backside rotations weren't really set and weren't really there.
Yep. So, yeah, and like you've said this almost every stream we've had recently, where it might cost you a couple games throughout the regular season, especially early on. But if it helps you later on because you practice them enough during the season to where it helps you win a playoff game instead of a game, early on in the season, I think you take that trade-off every time.
Yeah, and I said last stream, there's going to be some growing pains, right? And there's going to be a game here, a game there, where our defense looks awful when we're running, hedging or blitzing or whatnot. And it's going to be due to execution mistakes, not because of necessarily the scheme. The thing is, last season, our defense looked awful all season, even though we were running the scheme correctly. Even though we were running drop scheme correctly. Like Dame has gone on JJ Redick's podcast before and laughed at drop coverage about how easy it is to score against. Like basically Dame, I'm paraphrasing, but basically Dame said it's like the worst scheme to run defensively. Like that's what I got out of it, and JJ Redick was basically agreeing him. The thing is, that's what we always do. So, and you want more proof as to Dame being able to go off against that scheme. Dallas in the bubble last season ran that scheme almost the entire game. Dame dropped 61 on them, right? But you look at teams that trap and hedge Dame, and Dame, it's a lot tougher for Dame. So it's like, okay, we need to be able to do those things too against other guards that would exploit drop coverage like a Steph Curry. So it comes back to this. There's going to be some growing pains learning a new scheme and trying to improve the execution of different schemes, right? Because you can't just focus on one scheme if you're trying to run multiple. So, it's going to be a little bit slower in terms of the progress running each scheme compared to if you were just solely focusing on it. So there's going to be some growing pains. There's going to be some games where it looks bad, but I think in the end, we will win and make up those games that we might lose early in the season. We'll make them up at the end of the regular season, and then we'll be a lot better in the playoffs. So we'll come out as a very positive thing.
Yeah, I hope so. And I just hope we just need to mix it up. Like just don't be predictable. That's the worst thing you can be in the NBA is predictable. These guys nowadays are too good. Like every team pretty much has a guy. And we saw teams that have guys who weren't even known for that, like Josh Richardson and Karis LeVert, who he can handle the ball a little bit, but those guys killed us off drop scheme in the bubble games, and then people wonder like why we can't stop guys like that, so yeah, we just need to be able to switch it up. It's because those guys come off a pick and they know exactly where the big's going to be every time, and they know exactly what the guard's going to do to fight over the pick or lack thereof, and then they know where they can get their shots. And the players in the NBA are way too good to give them those looks every time consistently. You need to be able to get them a split second every time they go around a pick, not knowing for a second where the defense is going to be and have to adjust and figure it out for a second. And that's the difference between being a good defensive team and maybe only giving up, 110 points a game versus 118 points a game. And that's the difference between being a bottom of the league defender and middle of the pack to a better defending team.
Yeah. So It's crazy because we might be labeled Stotts apologists this season. You never would have thought that, huh? But you got Vivek like, oh, they're making excuses for Stotts when everybody's like, oh, they're way too hard on him, right? But no, I love what Stotts, like the mindset Stotts has defensively going into the season is exactly what I wanted. I love it, right? I said last game there's going to be some growing pains, right? And you're going to have some inconsistent performances. And you just look at the defense in the middle of this game, we had stretches where we looked phenomenal, like an elite defensive team for a couple minutes, and then stretches where we looked horrible. But that's the thing is like, the stretches where we looked great, we were executing the scheme properly and we looked great, right? The stretches where we looked bad, it was because we're making execution mistakes. And those execution mistakes aren't because the personnel can't run the scheme, because otherwise, if that was the case, they wouldn't have that phenomenal 2-minute stretch. You know, if they couldn't run the scheme properly. So those executional mistakes are very fixable. It's just going to take some time in order for them to fix some of the executional mistakes they make on the defensive end, running different schemes than what they're used to. You know, Dame running drop scheme the past 4 years, Nurkic running drop scheme since he got here, right? Like, there's going to be some growing pains. And I said that last stream, and this game is evident of that. I just think in the end, the only way we're going to contend is if we raise our defensive ceiling as high as possible, and this is Stotts' mindset going into this offseason. In the video I made yesterday and the quote I talked about, Stotts' mindset is allowing us to maximize our defensive ceiling at the end of the year, which is the only way we're going to have a chance at winning a championship. So that's why I love it.
And this is why people like Vivek shouldn't be saying anything right now, because look at it this way. Stotts is putting this out there. He's basically saying, I have to have a good defense or it's on me now. Instead, in the past, it's been like, oh, we didn't hit shots or we have too many injuries, stuff like that. Stotts is actually telling you now that he realizes he's got a good team. He doesn't have any excuses. So we're not apologizing or being Stotts apologists. We're saying this is a good thing, because either Stotts does what he's actually saying or he doesn't, and everyone can see what a crappy coach he's doing and what a bad job he's doing with this team and this personnel and this lineup, and then that's all on him this year and he has no one to blame it on. And so, like, obviously I want him to be, I'm gonna make sure he's given the chance to do what he's saying. If he doesn't do what he's saying he's going to do this year, then he should be fired, and it should be fired fairly early in the season if we're not doing well, because you can't just say that stuff and then not do it and then just default back to what you've been doing the last 8 years. So he's got to be able to make adjustments during a game, which he doesn't do very well. He's got to mix up his coverages. He's got to find a way to get some of these players who aren't necessarily good three-point shooters the ball where they're comfortable moving towards the basket instead of away from the basket. So this is all on Stotts this year, and I love that the pressure, both from Olshey, from Stotts himself, from the players, from the fans, he's in the magnifying glass this year, and it does us no good to like rail on him and be like, oh, he sucks, he's a terrible coach, fire him, and without like showing whether he can adapt or not, because he knows he has to adapt or he's gone. So he pretty much has to. So if he doesn't do that, then it's going to be obvious to everyone, including the organization, that he needs to go. So that time will come. So there's no reason to just be here and be like, oh, fire Stotts, he sucks, he can't coach or whatever, because like we have to give him the chance to do that. And it's not being an apologist, it's just like, if he does change, like, you have to give him credit for changing. I don't know what to say about that, but
yeah, I mean, and that's why I'm just completely open-minded. I'm going to give him a chance to adapt, and it's like, people made it out like we just wanted to criticize Stotts last season when we had very legitimate reasons, right? But like, if we don't have legitimate reason, we're not going to criticize him. And honestly, it's becoming, just based off this game, where people might actually are being a little too hard on Stotts in regards to the defense, I think, right? Like, Stotts can't change. I heard that a lot today. Stotts can't change what he does defensively. Like, he doesn't know how to change and adjust what he does defensively. And it's like, what are you watching? Like, we're running a completely different defense than we ran last year. It shows me that, like, Stotts has changed the defense and changed the philosophy, and he's been committed to it through 3 preseason games. So the argument about Stotts not being able to change or adjust doesn't make sense to me based off this, this game tonight, because it's completely different defensively than what we've ever done, right? So it Stotts trying to change and trying to adjust, and the players just needing some time to be able to execute it properly. So, like, it's going to take some growing pains, but it's like, if the defense looks bad, but Stotts is, doing what he should be doing scheme-wise and adjustment-wise, and the players are just struggling with the execution, then I'm not going to fault Stotts at all, right? Because the execution should improve. Now, if we're in game 52 and the execution of the defense hasn't improved at all, then I think you could put some of that on Stotts, because good coaching should help the players improve the execution on both sides of the ball, right? So that's the thing, is like, okay, if it's a good coaching job, then yeah, there will be some struggles early, but Stotts is doing what he needs to do, and if he's coaching it properly, then the execution will improve, and by the end of the year, this team will have maximized its ceiling and potentially be a contender.
Yeah, see, the problem is the organization has alluded to this too, where they need to get off to a good start. The seasons where they've struggled to make the playoffs have all been because they started off slow and got behind in the standings. So they don't have a lot of time. So my fear is that it's gonna not go well in the first few games, and he's just gonna revert back to last year.
That's my fear too.
and say like, well, look, we tried it, because how he said, like I mentioned this earlier in this stream, how he's tried to like double team someone once in a game, and then he'll be asked why they didn't be more aggressive on defense, and he'll be like, well, we tried it once and it didn't work, So he is very quick to go back to his stubborn ways when stuff isn't working. So like, I just hope that he does not do that, and that is my main worry with Stotts. And you and I will absolutely crush him if he does do that, and deservingly so, in my opinion. But if he doesn't do that, I also have to give him credit for sticking with it and for not just doing that when in the past he would have as well. So I'm going to wait and see. This is the 3rd preseason game, so like, and it could be a case, like I said, of them not wanting to show all these changes they've been working on in actual live game action either.
Yeah, and let me just say this about drop scheme. It is the easiest scheme to run and the easiest scheme to execute, but it's probably the worst pick and roll scheme, in my opinion. It's not so bad that like it should never be ran, right? I'd like to throw it in as like a different defensive look, and against some players it's the best pick and roll defense to run. But it's like, let's not take the easy way out. Let's become the best possible team by doing what's hard and getting the execution of multiple schemes down so that we can properly execute them, right? So that's the thing, is this like, I am a little bit worried that Stotts will revert back to what's easy, which would just be going back to drop scheme, and it would cap our defensive ceiling later in the season and in the playoffs, and it would make us less of a threat in the postseason than if we did what's hard and actually work on these things consistently and get the executional aspects of these different defensive schemes down. So yeah, I mean, I am worried about that. I just, fingers crossed, there's going to take some growing pains, and hopefully Stotts and the rest of the team realize that and are truly dedicated to improving their hedging the pick and roll, the backside rotations behind that. Hopefully they blitz a little bit and have the rotations, improve the rotations behind that. A lot of it does just come down to defensive rotations, and the rotations are a little bit different depending on the scheme. So hopefully they just dedicate themselves to improving the backside, and some of it is on the ball. Some of it is the big has to hedge a little harder compared to how they were kind of hedging soft and giving up a gap the first couple of games. So there's multiple different little things that they have to improve. I'm just hoping that they're truly dedicated to improving those things, because if they are, then I think it'll give us a chance to contend.
Yep, absolutely. I don't know if I'm lagging or if it's the stream.
Nah, we're lagging. Um,
There we go.
yeah.
There we go. We're back.
Little like 5 second lag spikes are so much nicer than 1 minute lag spikes or the stuff we used to deal with. I don't know if it'll like keep hiccuping, but no, the lag is much better than what it was last year. So
So, yeah, so we did play a little bit of zone too at the beginning of the game again,
did we? I
and
must have missed it.
against Denver, especially teams that have a passing big man like Jokic. Obviously, not many teams have that kind of weapon, but like that guy can just catch the ball at the top of the key and just absolutely pick apart a zone, especially if our rotations in that zone are a little slow. So it's not a good idea to run that kind of stuff against teams like that. And you saw how many wide open like cuts to the basket got them layups and dunks throughout this game. We just played so sloppy and sluggish, and yeah, I hope it was a little bit of playing in Denver, a little bit of just trying to get on the same page, but definitely they kind of clowned us tonight.
Yeah,
They were
yeah.
doing like trick plays and throwing the ball out the
Wasn't it
backboard,
wasn't
and
fun. Yeah, it
no,
wasn't fun. I just accidentally lowered my chair. It wasn't fun, man. That's the thing. Is like I just want to enjoy watching Blazers basketball, right? And this wasn't really an enjoyable game. By the way, quick little side note. Definitely remind me if I hit my desk because it is a bad habit and I know it pops the mic. I'll go back and like edit something and I'll hear the mic pop. So feel free in chat to remind, like, let me know if I'm hitting the table, because I do it for emphasis, bro. I'm just like making my point and pounding this thing, and I know it does pop the mic. So yeah, just remind me in chat if I'm doing that.
the one thing I'll say about the rotations on the backside, it's not always the rotations. It's one person, like way too often. It's not always the same person, CJ, but Dame too. But there's just way too many times their guy makes a pass and then they just ease up for a second, and then next thing you know, their guy dives to the basket and they're a step behind him and he gets a layup or a dunk because they weren't paying attention and lost focus for just a second. And you cannot have that. You have to have all five guys on the same page, and you cannot have any lapses at all. And if you're going to be an elite defense and not be torched like we were tonight, you have to be focused when you're on the court at all times. And we can play the best defense. Stotts can have the best schemes ever. And if people fall asleep like that on the defense, and it continues to be a problem, we harped on this almost every game last season. That kind of stuff cannot happen once again in the NBA. These guys are too good; they can take advantage of that. And
Especially a team like Denver that passes and cuts the way they do.
yep. And another thing is too, we started to see this a little bit in the second half, but Denver got a ton of open looks too by pushing the ball, and they pushed the ball really well. It's not really a fast break, but it's like they just get the ball up quick and get into their sets quick, and pass the ball quick and do everything quick. So it's not necessarily that they're like the Phoenix Suns 7 seconds or less offense or anything like that. It's that they just do everything in a way that is like they're trying to get a good look as fast as possible instead of just like waiting, and then, oh, let's try this or whatever. And that's what I want us to do more of, because I mean, we have good passers on this team. We're just as athletic, if not more athletic, than some of the Denver guys at least in the starting lineup or whatever. There's no excuse for why we can't do some things similarly to that and run the same kind of things where we're moving the ball so much and we're getting the ball up quick. We talked about this last game where a few times where Dame got a pass at like half court and got the ball up quickly. He already had a mismatch without even needing a pick and roll situation to get a mismatch. And stuff like that takes its toll on the other team throughout the game if you're constantly pushing the ball and making the right reads and getting dunks and lay-ins and stuff like that. So I want to see more of that.
Yeah, it was nice to get a couple fast break buckets, especially in that third quarter. We got a couple, and some of that was spurred on by forcing turnovers, playing great defense. And Rocco got a fast break bucket. I think Rocco's bucket was in the second quarter, but Derrick Jones Jr. got a couple fast break buckets, which is just, it's just when our half-court offense is struggling as bad as it was today, it's nice to be able to get out and run and get easy buckets like that. But like as you said, just pushing the pace more to get into our half-court offense earlier would benefit us. Shaggy Squid says CJ would benefit from being able to be that guy on a new team, and for us, he's way too ISO heavy and tunnel vision with the ball in his hands. I think it is a big part of our lack of ball movement. I don't think the lack of ball movement is really a CJ thing. I think it's more of like our bench unit, because like our starting lineup has a little bit better ball movement. I'm still waiting to see it. But like our bench unit, CJ is the guard, is basically the backup point guard. And it's not like he's bringing the ball up and then just going one-on-one and saying screw it. It's like it seems like the team is making a concerted effort to bring the ball up and then just toss it to Melo in the post and let Melo go one-on-one, or toss it to Canner in the post and let Canner go one-on-one. It's more of like a philosophical thing where it's just like we have these talented, like we have a talented post guy and we have a talented one-on-one player, even though, Melo isn't quite what he used to be, but it's more like, okay, because of that, we just decide to just let them go one-on-one every time down when those guys are talented offensive players, playing in an offense that moves the ball well, as well. You see Melo hit a good amount of shots off of good ball movement and catch and shoot threes, right? Melo's catch and shoot three is maybe his most efficient shot at this point in his career. And Canner is a good roll man and, a good guy catching drop-off passes inside and finishing like that. So it's not like we just have to feed these guys the ball and let them go one-on-one. But it seems like that's what we're just content with doing.
Yeah, CJ definitely. Here's the thing. He can do this. He can play make. He can be fine as the backup facilitator on offense. It's just basically the last 5 seasons, we've needed him to run the save us CJ, save us Dame play, and we haven't really had much variation or told him to do anything different. So the games where obviously Dame is out and he has to play point guard and he knows he has to be the point guard, he plays differently. So I just want him to get to that. I don't know if you can bring this up, but I sent you a clip on your DMs on Twitter. I don't know if you can play that on here, but it kind of goes with what we're talking about right now.
I might hold off on that. Because I mean, like that play that you sent me was like basically a CJ just going 1-on-3 and missing a wide open Derrick Jones Jr. in the corner. And I feel like we've seen that so many times that it's just like people know what we're talking about.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out with that particular play because we get a stop on defense. Okay,
I'll show it. Screw it. I wish I could I wish I had a license to show footage. How do I drag it? I can't drag it if it's full screen. Let me, I guess, do this. Yeah, I don't know if I don't think it will go full screen, so never mind. I wish there was an easy way for us to show footage. And I wish we had a license to show footage. Eric record off of TV, so it would be fine. It's just, bro, we could do so much good breakdown stuff of different clips if we could show footage, man. I really wish we could without like a copyright issue, because then I just set up streams to be able to do that. But yeah.
So just to describe it, so we get a stop on the defensive end. The ball goes to CJ. He makes a drive towards the hoop, and he's got a wide open shooter in the corner, and then he also has Nurk wide open under the basket. All he has to do is dump it to him. Nurk has a wide open dunk, and we score 2 points. So instead, CJ throws up like a runner on 2 people. It comes off. They get a rebound, push it, and score on the other end. So it's just like little stuff like that. Instead of us getting a dunk and possibly, I think it was still in the low teens, the game at the time. So like, instead of like having a momentum play where he feeds someone, he gets his big man going, or he gets a shooter going in the corner, he takes a bad shot, and then it leads to another basket, and all of a sudden, instead of being down like 10 or 12, we're down, 16, 18 or whatever. And it's just like little stuff like that. I wish when he's in the second unit, he would do a better job of thinking about what going one-on-one does for all 5 players as a unit versus just him scoring, because like he can score in that situation. I'm not saying he shouldn't try to score sometimes. He, like Eric Olson says, he just needs to get rid of the tunnel vision sometimes.
He just has to pick his spots better and make the right play more consistently. And sometimes the right play is making that pass, and he leans towards shooting more than passing in terms of that regard. So but I don't know. Like, he's been a little bit more tunnel vision this preseason than he was last season. So some of that I feel like could be, he isn't making reads quite at the same level as he did last year, because this is only his third preseason game and he hadn't played 5-on-5 until like the very start of this preseason. Like the last time he had played before was the end of the Lakers series, so some of it might be like his reads just aren't fully there. He needs to get back in the swing of things, and the easier thing to do is just go and hunt shots if you're kind of struggling to make the right reads, which he might be struggling with a little bit right now. So it's not something where it's like I'm going to get too frustrated with it. Like if this is game 8 and he's passing up open guys and shooting quite like this, then I will have more of a problem with it. But I feel like it's a little bit worse right now than it was last year in terms of his tunnel vision, and some of that I think he just needs to get back into the flow a little bit more in order to make the correct reads.
Yeah, absolutely. And so there's a lot of CJ hate going on in the chat. So we're not hating on CJ. I think he has the ability to be the perfect backup facilitator in this offense, and that's the most frustrating part to me is we've seen him do it where he can facilitate and make that right pass to Nurk, and I just feel like at times he's got to learn that even if he makes that shot, it's not as good as if he passes and gets his teammate an open dunk or whatever, and that's the kind of thing. If you're talking about the difference between playing too ISO heavy and losing a game in the playoffs versus sharing the ball and being a good, consistent team offensively, I'd much rather be the consistent team offensively that gets everyone involved than have to rely on someone like CJ making, 20 out of 30 tough shots with it throughout a game to win a game 7 or whatever. And it's no disrespect to him because he did win a game 7 in the playoffs. He can do it. I just there's no reason for him in a preseason game to look for his shot as much as he's been doing so far in these 3 games.
Yeah, people do overblow his tunnel vision though. I don't know, man. Vivek's comment, this is just kind of the stuff I'm talking about where like people just completely go overboard on the CJ hate. Like he says CJ is not a max contract player, a max contract fit. He robbed this franchise of millions of dollars to not play defense and not see open teammates when he's dribbling the ball and jacking up shots. Like, bro, without him, we don't make the Western Conference Finals. Like, we probably lose in 5-6 games to the Denver Nuggets a couple seasons ago. Without him, we... he had some big moments. Without him, we don't make the playoffs last season. We don't come out of the bubble with a playoff spot. That's the thing, man. Is like CJ still does a lot of good things, and like his deficiencies are frustrating. But the dude averaged more than 4 assists per game last season, and I know like you can't really base somebody's passing a whole lot just off of purely assist numbers, but he has to be passing somewhat to get over 4 assists per game, you know what I mean? Like his tunnel vision last season I felt like was really overblown. He's kind of struggling in that regard right now, but I feel like he just needs to get back in the flow of things and get better chemistry with some of the guys he's on the floor with in order to trust them more and know where they're going to be in order to make some reads that he's missing right now. So I'm not going to sit here and say he robbed the franchise of millions. Like, what does that even mean? The dude is a 20-plus point per game scorer, and a guy who wants to be here, a guy who is willing to let Dame take over games, because that's a huge thing. A lot of players that can get you 22 points per game want the ball in their hands consistently, and even if Dame's hot, if Dame shoots a couple possessions in a row, they'll go and take an outlet pass and try and make something happen for themselves. But when Dame's hot, CJ does defer to him, and he just sits off the ball, which is an underrated thing. People talk about how CJ just constantly hunts his own shots. He doesn't do that when Dame's hot. You know what I mean? Like, when Dame's hot, he defers to him, where a lot of guys would hunt their own shots and would be like, okay, I need to get mine too, and would take Dame out of his rhythm by hunting their own shot. So that's a really underrated thing, to have a guy who can score quite like CJ does, but then who's also, close with the number one guy and is willing to defer to him when he has it going, right? So there's some underrated aspects that CJ brings to this team that I feel like a lot of people don't focus on. A lot of people want to bash him and say he never passes the ball and a bunch of different stuff, and he's robbed the franchise of millions. And I feel like that's just overboard, man, because he has led this franchise to some big wins, and he helps this team. And most guys that will give you 22 and 4 a game are near max contract players anyway, right? So the whole like overpaid thing, yeah, maybe he's a little overpaid for his production, but what is that? That didn't stop us from doing anything this offseason, did it? Like, no. But maybe we could have signed a 15th guy, but like if he was making $10 million less, we'd still be over the cap. We'd still have used our mid-level exception on Derrick Jones Jr. Like, it doesn't matter that much.
And like Blockboy keeps saying, like, we need a facilitator. CJ is not a facilitator; he's a scorer first guard. That doesn't explain why, when he is the main guard, how he facilitates fine. Like, it's in there. I've seen it in there. Like, I've witnessed games myself. We've all witnessed games where he is a facilitator first and can do that, and it would open up his game. And until he realizes that, I think it's going to be a struggle for him. But if he could just figure it out, that he would get better shots if he makes that pass the next time he drives, like the play I was talking about, the guy might not be as attached to him. He might be worried about Nurk on the roll just for a second, and that lets him get all the way to the hoop like Dame does versus that. But if CJ had his own team, like if he was on Washington last year instead of Bradley Beal, he would have been averaging similar numbers, and everyone would be talking about how he was robbed of an all-star. He might have even been an all-star.
Yeah, and that's the thing. He's like, oh, he's not an all-star. He's making that type of money. If he was in the East, he would. Yeah, you look at like some of the players that make it in the East, they're not as good as CJ in the past few years, right? Like, didn't Kyle Korver make it, or was he? I forget. Like, a Hawks team had like 4 or 5 guys on it. Like, Kyle Korver made it when he was averaging like 13 points per game. You know what I mean? So that's why I don't base stuff off of all-star appearances, because it's very subjective. It's based on like team record and stuff. I'll give Eric some time to get himself, because he sounds like he's having a coughing fit right now. But yeah, let me switch it over to just my camera here. There we go. Yeah, the CJ hate, I feel like, is a little bit overboard. Shout out to the wine bottle back there, by the way. A lot of the CJ hate, I just feel like, is just overboard. He definitely has some frustrating deficiencies, but it seems like people try and over-exaggerate them, or they try and make them out to be worse than they are. So that's the thing. Like, people are talking about Fred VanVleet, like, Fred VanVleet's getting $20 million a year, and he's not as good as CJ. And I don't know. I just have an issue with the hate that CJ gets sometimes. It's kind of weird to be streaming by myself. I haven't done it in a long time, so hopefully Eric's all good. Eric doesn't smoke. I don't know what happened to him. I think he choked on water or whatever he was drinking. So if he messages me, I don't know. I'll just let him figure it out. I'll just answer questions from chat for now, or I can go through the box score. I'll probably wait for Eric to come back before I go through the box score. As Trevin says, throwback to last season's post-game streams. Yeah, I used to back in the day. I used to stream solo, but definitely don't have... it's definitely a little bit weird now. Okay, Eric, you good, bro?
I'm all good.
What, did you choke on some water or something? What just happened to you, bro?
No, I just when I was talking, I got a little dry thing, and then I tried to talk my way through it, and then it made it worse.
It made it worse.
Yeah. I tried to hold out until I was done talking, but yeah, it wasn't. Okay.
See, it's preseason mode for Eric. Eric has to get back in the flow of things as well. even me, because Allison said earlier, like, my voice sounded a little bit weird, and honestly, it's just going from streaming 2 days a week to, I don't know, like 5-6 days a week. It kind of takes its toll a little bit, you know. Mid-season we'll be fine, we'll have built up that endurance, but right now we're getting back in shape too. So yeah. It was weird to be streaming solo, man. I haven't streamed solo in so long,
I know,
dude. And
I
it was
heard you.
like, yeah, it was just weird, man. I just come back. Speaking of, like, somebody just said Anthony. I wish Anthony could be getting minutes right now. I don't know what his situation is. Did he fly to Denver, or is he not playing next game either?
I'd be surprised if he played next game.
That sucks, because this was like really his only chance to get minutes at the start of the season. I feel like he's definitely not going to be in the rotation. Sucks for Nas too, man. I don't know what the deal is with Nas. Like, I mean, I know, you know, he has COVID. You know, the team hasn't confirmed that, but Stott said he was sick, and one player tested positive for COVID. Like, it's obviously Nas. So I don't know, like, when he can come back or what the deal is. I don't think he's he's not on the plane either. So he's not going to play in this next preseason game. It just kind of sucks, because those were two guys that I really wanted to see this preseason, and we didn't really get to see them.
Yeah, for sure. And you don't know if he would have worked out his... I mean... For all we know, Ant could have been working on his facilitating and playmaking and is more comfortable running the offense this year. We saw CJ in his third year go from not being able to do that at all to being our backup point guard and being fine with that. So if Anthony's on a similar path, I mean, CJ didn't play much at all his first 2 years either. So it could have been a big jump season for him. But yeah.
Yeah, here's the thing, though. Like, kind of back to this, I don't want to go too deep into it because we already have. But, like, a guy like Anthony, it's like, if everybody's standing around and you're not in a set, how do you really facilitate? You have to almost go one-on-one in order to facilitate and break down the defense and draw defenders in order to make anything happen if everybody's standing around. So that's another thing. In regards to, like, CJ kind of being, you know, going one-on-one too much and being kind of tunnel vision right now, it's like a lot of times guys are just standing around, they're guarding, and CJ has to go one-on-one in order to make anything happen. So... yeah, I just want to see more ball movement, but a lot of that comes with more player movement in general, so it's not necessarily just the fault of the guy who has the ball in his hands. You want to get into the box score and just kind of run down that? Talk about individuals?
Not really, but sure.
We'll go quick. We'll go. Well, okay. Robert Covington had a good game. Robert Covington looked good. He was 6 for 9 from the field, 3 for 5 from 3. A couple of them contested. He had 15 points, 3 rebounds, had a steal. Defense looked a little better from him. I expect his defense to really step up a level. Like, it seems like he's not going 100%. And that's the thing with veterans. They're not going to go 100% in the preseason. You know, like that's going to be a thing. So that's why I can't like fully evaluate this team right now. But 15 points in 27 minutes, hitting some threes is just nice to be able to have like a 3-and-D guy that can hit some of the threes that he does, because he's a legit shooter.
Yep, I like the way Rocco played tonight.
Over in Rocco, Dame had 14. He was 5 for 14 from the field, 1 for 8 from 3, 4 assists, 3 rebounds. Another guy who, honestly, I thought he was playing at about 30% effort tonight on both ends of the floor. It didn't seem like he was interested at all, and I can't blame him either. It's the preseason, but like defensively is like he wasn't really hustling at all. And I know he's like not a great defender, but he normally plays a lot harder than he did tonight. I don't know if you had that takeaway too, but it just seemed like he wasn't interested in this game at all.
And I agree with that for the most part. But why do it's going to make me mad? I know it's a little bit of hindsight, but when we keep Dame in for the entire first quarter, like if we do that every game, regardless of how the game is going, when we're getting blown out, like what's the point of leaving Dame in and playing him 12 straight minutes if we are just going to like lose more of the lead anyway, or like lose more of, because when the starter or the bench started to come in, our deficit, I should say, started to go further and further and further. And what's the point of having Dame in and playing 12 straight minutes if the deficit's just going to continue to increase? Because like that's when you want to sit him. Maybe the bench, like someone can get hot or like something can get going, And then in the second half, you're within 10, and then you can play Day most of the second half because he sat, 8 minutes or 10 minutes in the first half. And it's preseason, so I'm not going to take too much of it once again, but he did this all of last year. And that's the way you get him, because what happens is he'll play him the whole first quarter, and then the second quarter will start off bad, so he'll have to bring him in early in the second quarter. And then a lot of times in the second half, in the fourth quarter, he won't even sub out because like we're trying to like stay in the game or whatever, and it's a matter of if this game's going to get away from us or not. But like we need to steal him some rest, and then we have a deep enough team, so some games he might not even need to play much in the second half either. And that way, he should have some games this year where he only plays 24 to 26 minutes instead of having to play 38 minutes every single game. And if you play him the whole first quarter, you're kind of setting that up from the beginning of the game to where he could never really take many minutes off during the game.
Yeah, I agree with that. CJ McCollum was 5 for 14 as well, just like Dame was. 2 for 5 from 3, 13 points. You know what's funny is I thought he was probably our worst defender today, and this is just a reason why you can't base defense off steals and blocks, because he had 4 steals and 2 blocks. 4 steals and 2 blocks. But a lot of the executional mistakes were CJ's mistakes, because the easiest part, I feel like, for CJ to improve defensively would be his off-ball defense, right? There's no reason for him to be a horrible off-ball defender, and honestly, that's probably the worst part of his defensive game is his off-ball defense, his backside rotations, his off-ball positioning, his outside positioning. We saw him get face cut for no reason today. Like, he was in great defensive position and basically just fell asleep and let his guy cut right in front of him, and his guy got a layup. So that's the thing, is like he'll make defensive plays where he'll get a steal or block a shot. He actually blocked a decent amount of shots last year for a 6'3" guard, but a lot of the mistakes with the defense come from him being out of position and it leading to breakdowns because of it. So really hoping he improves that this year. If he really wants to improve defensively, then if he's dedicated to that, then it should be something that improves, but it's really not even close to being there right now.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to keep saying this. I hope it's preseason, but we've seen with him in the past, it's not necessarily the case. It's got to be better. We can be a good defensive unit with Dave and CJ. I truly believe that. We have the personnel around them this year to finally put that theory to rest, in my opinion. But he's got to actually play well off ball for that to work.
Yeah. Other than that, the other 2 starters, Derrick Jones Jr. had 8 points, 3 for 7 from the field, 0 for 2 from 3. He played solid defense, and I feel like these are the type of games we're going to get from Derrick Jones Jr. I like that he's been pretty consistent throughout this preseason, though, and provided some things that were missing: a floor runner, lob threat, and a defensive wing. So, 0 for 2 from the 3-point line. He'll have nights like that. He's not the best shooter, but I'm still encouraged by the shooting that he's shown this preseason, because I think he's 4 for 9 now, which is what he was in the bubble. So, yeah, I mean, he didn't hurt the team. Some might be able to say that he didn't really help the team, but he's a glue guy, so a guy that can defend and a guy that can get out and run and finish around the rim. Like, games like this, they're not flashy, but it shouldn't undersell the impact he can have on a game.
Absolutely.
Nurkic played 20 minutes, had 7 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals. He's another one of those guys that just doesn't look like he has the feel for the game at the moment. He's not really in the flow of things, and this is really his first preseason game playing much minutes. He hasn't had as much practice time. He came back from Bosnia a little bit late, so he's going to need a little ramp-up period to kind of get back to the Yusuf Nurkic that we all know and love. He was 3 for 10 from the field, 0 for 2 from the 3-point line. I don't know how many threes he's going to shoot this season, but he missed one very badly today, and his form doesn't look bad, but the results, you can't rely on him as a 3-point shooter quite yet, which limits the potential for playing a guy like Giles at the 4 next to him, because Giles hasn't really proven his 3-point shooting yet, but Giles did hit an outside jumper today, right? Or am I thinking of something else?
He had a mid-range jumper. Yep.
Yeah, so like Giles has the mid range, and he might be able to stretch it out to 3. But yeah, off the bench you had Carmelo 5 for 12. Not as bad of a shooting night as I expected. You know, he wasn't terrible. He had a couple steals and a block. His defense needs to be a little bit better in terms of backside rotations as well, but 5 for 12 from the field, 2 for 5 from 3 is solid. He started off cold, but once he got a couple catch and shoot threes, that's when he started playing better, which I feel like goes back to my theory that when he lets the game come to him and he doesn't force isolations early, and he just, gets going off of catch and shoot threes, or maybe catch and shoot, guy runs him off the line, he takes one dribble in, shoots that mid-range pull-up. Those types of shots get his isolation face-up game going and gets him comfortable and into the flow of the game. The problem is he forced a lot of those isolation mid-range pull-ups before he let the game to come to him. He came in and they were just feeding him the ball in the post, and he was cold early, and then he picked it up later on. No thoughts?
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, hold on.
Canner was 6 for 8. Defensively, Canner's a bit frustrating right now. He's one of those bigs that probably works better in drop scheme, but offensively he was solid tonight. They kind of fed him the ball, and he posted up quite a bit early. But offensively, this is the game that you want out of Canner. The defensive issues with him running a more aggressive scheme have me a bit worried though.
This is another thoughts thing that might worry me. We talked about this on the show on Monday. Um, so Cantor comes in, gets absolutely abused on defense by Isaiah Hartenstein. uh, he made Hartenstein look like he was the second coming of Jokic out there. And this is going to frustrate me if we keep going back to Cantor in those situations, because Cantor's like a dependable guy if it's a close game or if it's a tough matchup, or we have a lead and we're not trying to be anything crazy, just kind of steady, consistent second unit type of thing. I think Cantor definitely has a role, like I've mentioned several times. But in a situation where we're down and we need some energy and the team looks sluggish, you have to put in Giles as the first big off the bench, in my opinion. And so that's going to be frustrating to me if we consistently go to the wrong person just because this is the veteran and this is who should be playing there and stuff like that. I think it needs to be more matchup and based on how people are playing, because there's no way, unless it was by design, that Giles should have played as little as he did, especially I think the way he played like 4 or 5 minutes in the first half. So I just wish we would go to Giles because we needed a spark. And Cantor, like I said, is a solid big. He's not going to do anything crazy to mess things up. He's not going to do anything crazy to like take over a game and dominate. So like when you're losing and getting blown out, you need to bring in a guy who is possibly going to provide a spark and get the team going a little bit. So I wish it would have been there.
Yeah, honestly, I think we need defense in that position more than we need offense. You look at our bench unit with CJ, Trent, Rodney Hood, Carmelo Anthony. We have enough offense, especially if you're just going to ISO a guy like Carmelo and CJ's going to ISO and you're going to ISO Hood every now and then. Like, on those possessions, Cantor isn't making any sort of contribution. Cantor's MO is like posting up and being a roll man on a pick and roll, right? So it's like his offensive contribution, I feel like he might be a little better offensively than Giles, but we don't really need that offensive production as much as we need a guy that can play defense in that position. And Giles is a far better defender, especially playing a more aggressive scheme. So it's like if we're down early, not only would it be nice to, as you said, have a guy that can bring a spark, but also have a guy that can run a more aggressive defensive scheme to try and change it up and create some momentum and create some easy, quick buckets to quickly get us back in the game. Giles in the lineup doesn't really do that because he's not good at running those specific schemes. I don't think he's necessarily like horrible, terrible, awful. Like, I think he's definitely bad, but I don't think it's something where, like, oh, we should only ever run drop scheme with Kanter in the game. I think you could throw it out a little bit here and there, but he's nowhere near as good as running those aggressive schemes as Giles is. So that's the thing, is like it needs to be a situational decision based upon what we need in that moment.
This is also why I'm not so quick to give up on Collins yet either, because he's a guy who can provide a spark simply by playing good defense, and is good in both drop coverage and aggressive coverage. So, I'm still willing to hold on to see what that. And if we can't figure it out between Giles and Kanter once the regular season starts, if our defense is still lacking a lot, I think that's when you'd see Collins coming back and actually getting a chance to join the rotation. If Giles and Kanter are running away and playing just even adequate defense, I think Collins is going to have a tough time making that rotation. But as for Giles, that one pass he had off the rebound to Kanter was sweet.
That was nice, man.
Was nice. What other big have we had recently that can make a pass like that?
Yeah, I mean, Nurkic is a good passer, but a lot of his passing comes from like holding the ball, reading the floor at the elbow or at the top of the key. Whereas like Giles is like a guy who can like cut, catch the ball, and be creative and like make a really quick read. I think Giles makes reads faster than Nurkic, even though like Nurkic's passing from the high post when he can just sit back and read the floor, kind of like a quarterback, is definitely really good. Giles can make those passes more in the flow of things, and that pass is a perfect example of that. So yeah, I mean, I like Giles, man. I would play him as the backup center over Kanter at this point, just given what the lineup needs. I'm not saying Giles is necessarily a better player per se. It's just you got to mix and match guys in a lineup to give you things on both sides of the floor, and I think we need a little bit more defense in that bench lineup, not another guy that we throw the ball to and isolate in the post necessarily. So
I'm still willing to make it like a situational thing. I just think when you're down, you need a spark, and Giles has provided that spark in the first two games. So why not go to him as the first big out the bench 6 minutes into the first quarter? If he provides you that spark, you're right back in the game versus, whatever the heck happened tonight. I don't even know what that was.
Gary Trent Jr. is a guy who could normally provide a spark, but he didn't really do much for us at all. He was 2 for 10 from the field, 1 for 4 from 3, 1 for 4 from the free throw line, which is terrible for a guy like Gary Trent Jr., who's a good free throw shooter. 1 for 4. Yeah, that's not it. He only had 6 points, was a minus 21, and he took some bad shots today, I thought. Like, he kind of forced things, which he's gotten a lot better about just taking the right shots, and, if he gets things going, then he'll be a little bit more aggressive, but he's a guy that... He's a guy that, like, during Summer League and during his rookie season, just what I saw him play, it's like he forces so many bad shots. And then he, like, kind of fixed that. He focused on defense. He got things together defensively. Now he's a really good defender. And he didn't force a bunch of like, bad looks last season, and he just kind of took the shots that came to him, and then once he got going, then he'd be more aggressive offensively. Tonight, some of the shots he shot reminded me of the way I felt about him before he kind of broke out last season, where it's just like, this guy, why is he shooting, a pull-up 18-foot mid-range jump shot contested? I think it got blocked a little bit with 18 on the shot clock. Those types of shots are extremely frustrating for me because you can pretty much get that shot at any time, and it's the most inefficient look in basketball. The long, contested 2 is the most inefficient look because the three-pointer, it's worth that extra point. So you might not make as much of them, but they're more efficient because you score more on them, right? So, and you're usually not going to get fouled on a mid-range 2, so it's not like he's putting pressure on the defense and has a chance of getting to the line, which would be an efficient play. Like, those shots early in the shot clock, we should never be settling for very long contested mid-range 2s with 18 on the shot clock. It's not a good shot.
It's the same thing we said about CJ, right?
Yep.
And so Jeremy Harris says, Gary ain't ready. I'm telling y'all, I said it the other day. What are you talking about, dude? It's like his first bad game in a while.
Don't even address that. I don't know what that is, man. Come on now.
But Gary did. So here's the thing. I've once again mentioned this before. Gary, in this game, last game as well, he had to run the point guard a little bit with the second unit, especially in the second half. And I feel like then he tries to do too much instead of in the first half. I thought most of his shots were somewhat under control. He did have a nice drive and dump off for a lane or dunk. I forgot what it was, if it was Giles or Cantor, but he did have a nice pass out of that. And I'll say the same thing that I said with CJ. If Gary Trent wants to become elite efficiency wise on the mid range, he's got to pass out of there first, so it sets up the defense, and then they can't collapse on him as much. And like you said, he can get that shot anytime, so just pass first, and then if you get the ball back and it's closer to 5-6 seconds left on the shot clock, sure, then go pull up and shoot a long two. But you don't have to take that shot early in the shot clock, and you don't have to take that shot with the personnel we have. We don't need to take – there shouldn't be many games this year where we're saying shot selection was bad tonight. There's no excuse for that with the personnel we have.
Yeah, and here's the thing. He plays better offensively if the ball's moving, because not only does he buy into the ball movement more and make the right pass more often if the ball's moving and he thinks he might get it back, but also I think he just shoots better if the offense has some rhythm to it. Some guys, if the offense, is moving the ball and the offense has some flow and some rhythm to it, they are able to use that rhythm to shoot better. They are more comfortable in that compared to like standing there for 10 seconds watching Melo, ISO, pass up a shot, get the ball back, ISO again, then kick out to him. There isn't as much rhythm and flow with that, and I think he shoots a little bit worse when the offense is stagnant. So the offense was super stagnant today, which led to him, like when he got the ball, he tried to make things happen, and then he didn't shoot too well. I think if the bench moves the ball better and moved the ball better tonight, he would have had a better game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Other than that, you had CJ Ellaby. He had a really nice drive tonight and finish around the rim, which is like not his game, you know what I mean? He missed 3 threes, right? For some reason, his jumper is just awful. The thing is, he's a guy who can shoot the ball and shot the ball in college, so I think that's just the adjustment period. Some rookies come in and can't buy a bucket and just need some time to get comfortable shooting threes at the NBA level when you might not have as much time. The three-point line is longer and stuff like that. So I'm not reading too much into the fact that he hasn't shot the ball well through 3 preseason games. Like that happens with rookies. It's 3 games. He is a shooter. We'll see how good of a shooter he is at the NBA level. Like once he gets comfortable, maybe he just isn't as good of a shooter as I think. But
I agree with Beavis. He looks really nervous out there.
Yeah, you're playing in the NBA.
Justifiably so, yeah.
Yeah, so once he gets that under control, he'll probably knock down more shots. He'll get more comfortable from a longer distance. He just needs some time with that. The drive I thought looked good. He looked quick. He had a good finish around the rim, and he's not a slasher in my mind. So that drive, it was like, okay, if he can do a little bit of that as well as like get comfortable from 3, then maybe you might have something there, because his defense has been decent this preseason in terms of his positioning and in terms of like his effort, and his defense looks okay. And if he can knock down threes and then slash occasionally, like that's probably an NBA role player. Maybe not on a good team, but if you're talking about a 46th overall pick, like you're just looking for flashes of things right now. And I'm not going to judge him until his 3rd year, right? You've seen so many guys not even be in the rotation year 1, year 2. CJ was one of them. Alan Crabb was one of them. Pat Connaughton is another one of those guys. Like you've had so many Olshey guys, you've had so many Olshey second-round picks not look that good when they've came into the league and they've needed a couple years to develop, but then once that 3rd year or so rolls around, then they become decent NBA players. You look at a Will Barton too as another one of those guys. So that's the thing. It's like I'm not going to overreact based off 3 preseason games in regards to him. I'm going to give it 3 years, not 3 games, and we'll see what he looks like in year 3.
Yep.
Other than that, you had Rodney Hood play 8 minutes, 0 for 3. He's going to need some time to get back to it. I was surprised he didn't play more than this. Was there a reason for that?
No, Stott said he was going to ramp up the minutes of both him and Nurk, so yeah, I was surprised.
How many minutes did he play last game? Didn't he play more?
I thought he played close to 12 minutes last game. Yeah, at least that was the plan. I'm not sure what it exactly ended up being, but...
That's not ramping up. That's ramping down a little bit.
Yeah.
So I don't understand that necessarily. Like, it kind of has me worried that there was a reason he didn't play more, because I would have expected him to play like 12 to 15 minutes in this game. But he was 0 for 3, got the ball stripped a couple of times. he's going to need some time to get back to what he was last year. And this is why it's nice to have this sort of depth, because he is he's just going to need some time, coming off the Achilles injury. He doesn't look as energetic, doesn't look as spry, doesn't look as explosive. He wasn't an explosive player before, but he just looks a little sluggish. So he's just going to need some time to get back, because an Achilles tear is really hard to come back from. Normally you need time to really get back to the player you were before, or close to it. So some of that is comfort level. He's barely, he hasn't played for an entire season, an entire year. So some of that is he just needs to get more comfortable out there on the court, because he definitely has a lot of rust right now, on top of the physical limitations he might have, coming back off this injury. So, I'm not worried about him whatsoever. Like, we knew he would need time to ramp up. It just, I was kind of hoping I would be pleasantly surprised and he would just look like he did last year, but that's not the case.
Well, I think he might be a little nervous too, just playing again and stuff. But yeah, it's he definitely looks. I don't know if he's if chunky is the word, because he just looks bigger than he played at last year. So it's going to take him a while to get back into game shape. Same like we were saying about Nurk and stuff like that. So, and the problem is you can't overdo it in his situation either. So you don't want to just go all out and risk, anything bad happening. So, I'm fine with him being brought along slow. We have a deep enough team to where he shouldn't have to play a lot or contribute a lot. And if he takes some time to get ramped back up, that should be fine. But yeah, hopefully by a couple months from now, we're saying look how good Rodney looks. He had a nice steal tonight and dribbled the ball up the court on the fast break. It's just good to see him out there. But eventually he'll have to start hitting those mid-range shots again and finishing on some of those drives. I don't know if he's even shot a three-pointer yet.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to tell if he still has this three-point stroke from last year. But yeah, it's just good to see him out there. And I think the fact that he's actually playing and they're not saying he's going to be out till January like Collins is a good sign. I think he'll be fine.
Yep. Speaking about let's touch on a couple Denver Nuggets. Okay, Michael Porter Jr. sucks. We all know this running joke, right? But it's not really a joke, right, guys? Anybody who's watching me for the first time and haven't heard my disdain for anything Michael Porter Jr., I don't like Michael Porter Jr. But on a serious note, PJ Dozier looked like an NBA bench piece. That's really the only guy I want to talk about, because that was a guy I was high on in the draft a couple years ago. Played for South Carolina in the Final Four when they made it, and lost to my Gonzaga Bulldogs, right? Lost to Zach Collins in my Gonzaga Bulldogs. But he looks like an NBA bench piece, so him stepping up could definitely help out the Nuggets, because they lost some depth and they'll need a couple guys to step up and really, provide a punch off the bench, because they don't have anywhere near the depth they did last season. PJ Dozier, him hitting threes, he wasn't much of a three-point shooter, and then, he has size and defensive ability and some slashing ability. I think he's going to be a kind of a little bit of a breakout player this year.
Yeah, I don't know if he's been kind of a journeyman. But yeah, it's he's definitely got some skills that have allowed him to stick around for a couple of years, but I don't know. He looked pretty bad in some games last year. But yeah, if he develops that jumper, obviously things could change really quickly for him.
I just think he'll be like a Duncan Robinson. Not quite to that level, but just kind of break out in the same way. And, Christian Wood was a journeyman before and kind of broke out a little bit last year. You see some of these guys that are journeymen and then just kind of put it together in the right situation. And Denver does a good job of developing unheralded players. So, I expect.
People want us to talk about Campazzo.
Why? That guy did not look like an NBA player, man. Dude airballed.
No, okay. So
and
I would say I completely disagree with that. That guy looked like he had elite passing ability, kind of Sergio Rodriguez-esque, but then yeah,
Milos Teodosic.
Yeah, then he took that shot, and I was like, oh, okay, that's why.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, where did this guy come from? He's really quick with his handles. He gets into the paint with ease, and then he was making fancy kickouts, and and then all of a sudden he took a shot. And it was like a weird, like two-handed almost shot or
Yeah, it
something. It
was
didn't even come
bad.
close. And I was like, oh, okay, you can't shoot. That's why.
He's oh, I did not realize this. He's only 5'11".
Yeah, he's tiny.
Bro, if you're talking about a 5'11" guy that can't shoot, I mean, I don't really know. Maybe he can shoot. Maybe that was just a bad shot. I don't really know much
Yeah,
about him. If you're talking about a 5'11" guy that can't shoot, I don't care how good of a passer you are. You're not, you're not a guy that should be on in an NBA rotation at least, So, I mean, Milos Teodosic couldn't make a stick, and he's like, what, 6'5", and can kind of, he's not a good shooter, but can knock down a three here and there and can pass really well. And he came to the league. Everybody was waiting for him to come to the league thinking he was going to be like this really good player. And then he was out after what, 2 years? Was it, how long was he here?
I think it was
2
2 years. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he's back overseas. So yeah, some guys can come over and make it stick, like a Maxi Kleba or Daniel Tice. Oh, there's the ESPN ad. But yeah, some guys can make it stick, and some guys just don't have it. Their game doesn't translate to the NBA.
Yeah, for sure.
You got on the okay. Maybe that's an NBA player I could beat 1-on-1. Considering if he can only pass, if he can only pass, maybe I could beat him. He doesn't have anybody to pass to. He has to. I'll just let him shoot threes. Like, no, I'm obviously joking, but
See, that's why I hate playing 1-on-1 because a lot of my moves are set up with the threat to pass. So if I don't have anyone to pass to, it's not quite as good, and I'm not.
it's
as
30
quick.
dribble, back down, back me, past the baseline, then layup.
I've never backed you down
I'm just kidding.
because you whine about it. No.
No, I made a rule when I played Eric 1-on-1. I said, bro, I didn't even make a rule. I just asked him, like, don't do the cheesy stuff where you just back me down for 20 dribbles until you have me under the hoop and then you just have a lay-in. Like, I don't know. I hate when people play 1-on-1 like
I thought
that.
your post defense was good.
Well, yeah, dude, I was just leaning. Like, I don't know. I'm a little. I know how to hold my own in the post against guys that like way more than me, because that's what I had to do in high school. I was basically a big, and I was skinny as hell. I was like 180 pounds, so I was going up against guys that are like 220, 230, and I had to like learn different ways to like not just completely bullied down there. Now I'm, a lot. No, I weigh a bit more than I did in high school. I was my nickname in high school was Bones Jones, before John Bones Jones was even known, so he stole that nickname from me. But yeah, it was Bones for a reason. But now I think I could handle you a little bit easier. I actually need to lose some weight. So anyway, anything else you want to touch on from this game?
I thought Hartenstein looked good. Like I said earlier, he might find his way to being a quality big. It's someone who hasn't really gotten a shot in the league yet, but you can see he's got a pretty nice skill set, at least offensively, with his passing ability, his ability to finish around the hoop, and he can shoot a little bit from the outside. So that might be someone to keep your eye on.
Underrated pickup, yeah.
I'm still fascinated by Bol. I mean, just some of the stuff he can do. The problem is I don't think he can play center, but there aren't many guys his size that could do some of those things either. He's just a weird player, but he's fascinating to watch.
He's not even in the rotation though. Everybody's hyping him up going into the season, like, oh my goodness, Bol, and looks like he's behind Hartenstein. He didn't check in until 6 minutes left in the game, so yeah, I don't know I don't know if he's going to be in the rotation or not. It doesn't seem like it just based on tonight.
Yeah.
But speaking of bigs hitting threes, Najee hit a three. I was a little surprised by that. Yeah, Najee hit a three. Giles just completely left him. I don't think Giles knew he could actually shoot. But did he hit last year for Arizona though?
Yeah, he shot a decent amount. He was like, I want to say at 26, 27%. Obviously, he needs to improve, but he is a guy who was thought of a guy who could possibly be a pop guy in the NBA like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see how just Denver develops like all their guys they pick that they draft, so I feel like he'll develop too, you know.
Yeah.
We'll just have to wait and see on that. But anyway, that wraps up the stream. Tomorrow we'll talk about the Giannis re-signing, which I think is great for the NBA. I was actually excited to hear that. That's great. A superstar staying in a small market. You know, we all love Dame for that. I respect Giannis for not going and chasing a ring the easy way and forming a super team and all that. So, you know, he stays in Milwaukee. We'll elaborate on that on our stream tomorrow night on Blazers Uprise Live in between today's game and the game on, what's today? Wednesday? The game on Friday. Okay. Yeah, so tomorrow night we got our normal Thursday stream at 9 p.m. Pacific time. We'll go live.
We also need to talk about how Kendrick Perkins ate James Harden and took over his life.
Bro, the James Harden pictures are ridiculous. But there's like a picture from him the day before, and he looks like a completely different person. I don't understand that. We will have to compare and contrast those pictures, man. If somebody's going wild with the Photoshop. But he looked like I've been using this word a lot lately, which I've never used on streams before, but he was looking very hefty on the court during his first game back, but like the shoot around the day before, he didn't look anywhere near that hefty. So I don't know what the deal is, man. It is confusing to me. It's an enigma. So yeah, we'll talk about that and anything else you want us to talk about. And we'll answer your questions. You know, post-game streams, it's kind of hard to answer questions, and I'm trying to keep these capped at about an hour and a half since it's preseason. We'll go a little bit longer once the regular season rolls around. But, yeah, so we can answer more of your questions there. Other than that, you know, just thank you for tuning in. We'll have a website launch tomorrow. The website's already up if you guys wanted to go check it out, but we have a couple things to clean up with it and a couple things that we still need to do with the website, but it's basically launched. Reese dropped a post-game recap, a quick little one tonight, and we'll have some written content and stuff like that. So yeah, if you guys want to go check it out, blazersuprise.com, we will have an announcement probably tomorrow announcing that, even though, you know, we still have some things to shore up. So if you have any feedback on the website, definitely let me know on the stream tomorrow night, or, you know, on Twitter or something. If you guys have feedback, you know, maybe something that I should add to the website, maybe something that I should fix if there's an issue, that type of thing. So, you know, we're rolling it out, and it'll be a little bit of a work in progress at the start, but, you know, just happy to finally get that launched and get that going. So anyway, other than that, not really anything else left to say. Anything you got?
Nope. Tough game to watch tonight.
Eric's always Eric's always chilling on the outros. So, well, I'm trying to think of everything I need to say for you guys. Leave a like on the stream. It really does help us out. Subscribe if you're new to Blazers Uprise Live. If you don't know our main channel, there is a link at the top of the description below that is Blazers Uprise. This is our live streaming channel. That's why it's Blazers Uprise Live. So, you know, subscribe to both if you haven't already, and leave a like. I appreciate it. Other than that, we're out of here. We'll catch you guys later. Hope you guys have a good rest of your night. As always, peace out. Go Blazers.